Hi you guys, it's Arielle. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys are all doing well. In today's video, I will be letting you guys in on the little secret, which is one of the best rental agencies in all of Paris, especially for international people who don't have French guarantors. I personally use this agency to find my own apartment, so I know it is not a scam. If you are struggling to find an apartment in Paris, if your applications keep getting rejected, if you don't have French guarantors, then this video is for you. We are going to talk about quite a lot in this video. I will leave all the timestamps below. I want to give you a little overview of who the agency is, why I love this agency, as well as my own personal experience with this agency so you know a little bit of what to expect if you choose to work with them. One other final reminder before we get into this video is that if you guys are in apartment hunting mode right now, I have a whole playlist on how to find an apartment in Paris, which I highly recommend you check out, specifically the video on apartment hunting. It'll give you a lot more specific, in-depth, and strategic information on how to find apartments that you can go and view, as well as how to create a really good application, a really good dossier to send in. So I will leave that playlist and that video link down below, and without further ado, let's get into it. So the agency I use to find my apartment is called Sergique, and I had actually never heard of them before. I found them through a post on Se Loger, and once I viewed the post, it took me to the agency's actual website where I was able to read more about the apartment and actually go online and book a viewing. And this is the #1 reason why I think Sergique is amazing. You don't have to call or email landlords and agencies and wait for them to sift through all the other applicants and to finally answer your email days or weeks later. If you see the ad early enough, you are guaranteed a visit because they allocate appointments on a first-come, first-served basis. You'll go on their website, you'll see the apartment that you're interested in, and you can click a button that says book a viewing, and a time slot table will appear, and you'll pick the time slot that is most convenient for you. What is really great about this, on top of being able to book and confirm your own viewing at your leisure, but also the fact that they have limited viewings, you'll see on the time slot table that they'll have 10 or 12 viewings per apartment, and once those viewings are taken, they don't add more. Another thing that I really appreciate about this system is that your appointment belongs to you. So it's not like with other agencies or other landlords where they jam-pack 4, 5, 6 visitors with their parents viewing the apartment at the same time as you. Those group-style visits tend to feel a lot more stressful, a lot more competitive because you can see the people you're up against. And so it's really nice when you can be able to book your own time slot that is only for you and you know that there's only 10 or 12 other candidates. The reason I want to highlight this as such a good point with this agency is because normally you have to call and you have to email to get viewings. And typically about 10% of the people or the agencies you reach out to via phone call or email will get back to you and will give you a viewing. So with Sergique, being able to go on, book, and confirm your viewing is a really, really big deal. Once I booked my appointment, I got an email confirming the visit, and on the day of, I went and I viewed the apartment. What I found interesting and a little bit different about this process is that the viewing was actually done by a third-party provider. So I guess what happens is Sergique will send a list of all the appointments and the names of the visitors to this third-party service who will send someone to come and do these visits. And the idea of outsourcing all that groundwork to third-party providers is a pretty big characteristic to note with Sergique. The way that I've come to understand this agency is that they're kind of like the brain of the operations and they do everything remotely from their offices, and anytime there's groundwork like the état des lieux or the visits, they outsource this to other providers who will take care of anything that needs to be done in person. So voila, the day of this visit, I met this woman who showed me around. She wasn't necessarily from the Sergique agency, but she was, I guess, hired to do that visit. There is a minor downside to this, which is that because the woman doesn't work for the agency, she isn't well versed in all of the apartments she's doing viewings for, so she couldn't really answer any specific questions I had. I asked about the washing machine, about the windows and stuff like that, and she didn't really know. This wasn't really a big deal for me because as soon as I saw the apartment, I fell in love with it. I knew I was going to apply for it. So yeah, it didn't really bother me that she couldn't answer my specific questions, but if you do run into this problem using this agency, you can always contact them by email and they are super quick with their response times. Right after this visit, like we're talking 1 minute later, the agency sent me sort of an automated email that prompted me to create an account on their website and submit my electronic application through my account. And I did this immediately. So I got home from my viewing, I sat down and I sent off all of my paperwork tout de suite, like done. So at this point, in my case, I had the first appointment booked and I was the first person to send in my dossier, which is very important. Now comes the reason that they are the best agency, especially for international people. Once you've sent in all of your paperwork, they do not judge or rank candidates based on their application. Now, what I mean by this is normally, once you do your viewing and you've decided that you want to apply for the apartment, you will send your entire electronic application, all of your paperwork, via email to the agency or to the landlord. You will do this, and so will the 25, 50 other candidates who also saw that apartment. And the agency or the landlord will then go through all of these different applications and they will offer the apartment to the candidate that has the best on-paper application. The problem with this is that even if you meet the criteria for renting the apartment, you don't stand a chance against someone who has an application that is 50 times better than you on paper. So everyone knows that the main criteria for renting an apartment in Paris is that you have to earn 3 times the rent in your monthly salary. And that is what qualifies you to rent an apartment. And so if you're a candidate that meets that sort of minimum requirement of earning 3 times the rent, so technically you are eligible for this apartment, your application will be beat out time and time and time again by someone who earns maybe 4 times the rent in their salary and has 2 or 3 guarantors who are willing to co-sign the lease with them. So in my case, for example, my applications were constantly being rejected by other agencies and landlords because even though I earned 3 times the rent, like I met the criteria for renting the apartments, I was constantly being beat out by people who earned maybe a similar amount as me or even students, but who had parents, like 1 or 2 French parents who are willing to act as guarantors and co-sign the lease with them. Another thing too, which is unfortunately very common in France, is that renters will doctor their payslips in Photoshop to show this fake salary, which is much higher than what they actually earn. And this is not something I was willing to do. I was not willing to lie on my application, but what this meant is that for a lot of my other applications, the candidates I was up against earned 2 or 3 times more than I did, even if that wasn't necessarily true. With Sergique, on the other hand, you send in all of your paperwork, all of your documents through the candidate portal, and they check to make sure that you have everything sent in, that everything meets that minimum requirements, and your dossier is approved. That's it. It's not ranked, it's just approved. And because they work on a first come, first served basis, if you are the first person to send in your dossier, you meet all the requirements, but you don't necessarily have the best dossier, you will get the apartment over other people who are in line behind you. I want to give you a timeline for this as well, so you know how fast you have to be in this process and how quickly the agency will offer an apartment to a candidate. So I did the very first viewing of the day. I came home, I sent in all of my paperwork. Within 4 hours, they had checked everything and they gave me a call because I was missing one paper. It might have been a payslip or something that they couldn't read through the scan. And once we had that phone call, within 30 seconds, I emailed them the missing piece of paper. And 1 hour later, so 5 hours from when I had first sent in my application, Sergique had approved all of my paperwork. Once my application was approved, I was sent an email which allowed me to click a button and go back into my candidate portal and actually reserve the apartment. Once this was done, pending my payments and the signature of the lease, the apartment was officially mine. And all of it, the visit, the application, the reviewing of my documents, the reserving of the apartment, all of that was done in less than a day. No guarantors, no crazy high salary. All I had to do was make sure that I had a complete application and that I was able to show that I earned at least 3 times the monthly rent in my salary. Once all that was done, and once I had reserved the apartment, the agency called me and sort of explained how everything would go. We set up a move-in date, and she explained to me that I would get the lease electronically. All the signatures would be done electronically, and yeah, it was just smooth sailing from there. Now, post-application, post-move-in, there is one other reason that I absolutely adore this agency that I want to quickly talk about from the perspective of a renter, and that is the fact that Sergique is an incredibly responsible, and attentive agency. Anytime I've had to communicate with them or if I've had any problems or anything like that, they've always been really, really quick with their responses and extremely efficient in helping me in every way that they can. The initial inspection, so the état des lieux, which you do right before you're given the keys to the apartment, that was done very professionally. Everything was done electronically, which meant that they could take photos of you know, the state of things. For example, the flooring was pretty worn down, and I was like, let's take a picture of this because I don't want to replace like a whole flooring when I move out, like dents, marks, all of that. I wanted pictures of that just so that I wouldn't be held accountable. And because they were doing the état des lieux electronically, that could be done, whereas most other landlords do it on like classic pen and paper, which isn't the best for the renter. And actually during this initial inspection, we noticed that the sink and the shower were leaking, and so immediately the agency sent in a plumber who repaired everything. Once the plumber was there, he found out that the hot water tank had to be replaced, and so I sent an email to the agency, and like half an hour later, they were on it. They were sending another plumber in to have everything replaced. They were just so fast in their responses, very easy to get a hold of. They made everything for me as the renter seamless. They didn't blame me for anything. They didn't try and give me the runaround. They didn't ask me to wait weeks. My whole experience with Sergique has just been smooth sailing. Voila, that is my experience with the very fabulous agency Sergique. I really encourage you guys to check them out, especially if you are struggling getting your application approved or getting viewings booked. The rental market in Paris is just so competitive, so I'm incredibly grateful for such an amazing experience with this agency. That is all for me today. Let me know if you guys have any questions down below, if you want me to clarify anything. Sinon, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.